Having good technique is essential if you want to improve fast and reach your full potential as a player. So in this video, I'm going to show you the most common technique mistakes that I see pickleball players making. As a coach, I can't stress enough how important it is to have good technique. The longer you make these mistakes, the more ingrained they become in your game and the harder they are to fix. So make sure to go through this video as a checklist to make sure you're not doing anything that could be holding you back. So the first mistake I really want to go through, guys, because it's so important, is what I call pulling off the ball. It's super common and most players have no idea that they're doing it. So all pulling off the ball is that when you're hitting the ball, your stroke is too round. So obviously when I'm hitting a forehand, I'm supposed to come around my body, right, and finish on this other side, especially from the back of the court. But when I'm making contact with the ball, in order to hit the cleanest shots and the most consistent shots possible, it's in my best interest to keep my swing along the path where the ball is going for as long as possible. So what we call this is extension. So if I hit a little slow motion forehand here, you'll see I want to extend out towards my target. I don't want to cup around it. Because when I'm going around it too much and pulling off the ball, the odds that I hit the center of the paddle are lower because I'm only in this contact point for a really short period of time before I pull off. When I'm extending, I pretend like I'm hitting 6 balls. So even if I hit the ball a little bit too early or a little bit too late, because I'm extending, I'm still gonna hit it clean. So by doing this, you will increase your consistency drastically. We like to say that you should point towards your target with your arm as you're hitting it. This is most important from the back of the court when you're hitting ground strokes. So you need to think about this on your backhand too. You wanna extend. You also want to think about this on your volleys though too. You want to extend. You should never be pulling off the ball or the odds that you miss hit it go up drastically. The next mistake I see players making is they're not keeping their head still when they're hitting the ball and they're bobbing their head around when they're moving around the court. So when you're playing in pickleball, your head needs to stay still and on balance because this is what gives you the ability to react quickly to shots. If my head's all over the place as I'm moving, it's way harder for me to prepare and react for my opponent's hard shots. And on my stroke specifically, if my head is moving and I'm looking away as I'm hitting the ball, it becomes very easy for me to make the first mistake where I pull off. So if you watch tennis players like Roger Federer, you'll see as they're hitting a ball, their head stays perfectly still the whole time. So you can kind of practice this by exaggerating it a little bit. As I'm hitting my forehand, I actually look at where I hit the ball after I hit it, right? And what that does is it makes you hit the cleanest possible shot. So you don't have to stay and look at it after you hit the ball at an actual point, but in the warm-ups or something, you can exaggerate it and it will make you do a better job of that in your game. What you don't want to be doing is hitting the ball and looking away like this. This is a classic beginner mistake, and when you do this, the odds that you hit the sweet spot go down a lot. So you need to make sure that you're watching the ball, keeping your head still until after you hit it. And from the kitchen, you don't need to keep your head looking at the ball after you hit it because you don't have as much time. But from here, at the very least, as you're moving around, notice how my head stays level. So I'm not ever bobbing my head up and down. I do that with my feet so that when Drew speeds up at me, I'm ready for it. And I'm ready to respond. I don't want my head to be moving around too much because if I am, then when he speeds up at me, I'm not ready, right? So if your head is off balance and you're moving your head too much, you're probably off balance with your feet when you're up here. The next technical mistake I see is called chopping your slices. And it's very common. So watch these 2 slices and see if you see any difference. So in the first slice, I'm really cutting down and I'm kind of almost going sideways with my elbow. The second slice, I'm primarily using my shoulder for power and I'm really just cupping under the ball. So the second slice is what we want and the first slice is what we don't want. The first is what we call chopping. So when you're hitting a slice, meaning you're getting backspin on the ball, whether you're dinking or you're hitting it from the back of the court, you don't want to be going too much down because with a pickleball paddle, we don't have tennis strings and we can't get that much spin. And the benefit of going for crazy underspin isn't really that big. The slice in pickleball, especially from the back of the court, is primarily a consistency-based shot that we use on the return. So when you're hitting this shot, you want your stroke to be pretty linear. You should have a continental grip. You don't need to be going down that much when you're hitting it. It should really just be forward through the ball and you cup under it a little bit. So that looks like this. That's a great way to hit the slice. You don't need to be doing this. And if you're worried about getting enough spin, if you have a good paddle, you should be able to do it. And I mean, a paddle like the SWEETSPOT team, this is only $50. As long as you have a good surface like this with the carbon fiber, you're going to get enough spin to where when you're going through the ball, I still get a good amount of spin there. I do not need if you're going for some crazy chop, it reduces your consistency. The odds you shank it or miss hit it go up a lot. Just go through the ball in your slice, do not chop.
Hey, real quick, if you need a new paddle and want a premium one without spending $200, you should consider getting the SWEETSPOT team. It has a T700 carbon fiber face and all the same materials usually found in $200 paddles, but if you use code SQUAD at checkout, you'll get it for just $49. This deal is exclusive for our YouTube viewers, so go check it out. This code works for our other paddles as well.
The next mistake is what I call arming the ball. So from the back of the court, especially when drives, you do not want to be using your arm as the primary source of power. So that looks like this. I can hit it pretty hard like that, right? I got a lot of pace on that ball just using my arm, but a good drive looks like that. So as you can see, I'm getting my weight forward through the ball and I'm getting rotation on it. If I'm just arming it, I can't hit it nearly as hard. And I lose a lot of my accuracy because I have to be moving my arms so fast that it could be anywhere by the time I'm hitting the ball. So if you set yourself up properly for a good contact point, you should be able to rotate through the ball and get your weight forward. So you can do a backhand too. You don't want to just only arm it. I see a lot of players sort of arming it like that. You want to set up sideways and rotate through the ball. This doesn't really apply as much to drop. So on a drop, I want to be rocking forward through the ball. I don't need to be rotating as much. But on drives and on serves, don't arm the ball or you'll get way less power. The next mistake sort of relates to the last few, and it's what we call elbowing the backhand. So when you're hitting your backhand from the back of the court, you don't really want to be using your elbow for much power. So if I'm doing it like this, whether it be a topspin or a slice, as you can see, if you know what good technique looks like, you can tell that's not good technique. Good technique is where you're using your shoulder as the primary source of power. So when I'm hitting a slice, I'm not really moving my wrist or my elbow at all. When I'm hitting a topspin, same thing sort of applies. Almost all that power is coming from my shoulder and my rotation. So if you're using elbow, this is a tough one to fix. It's a little bit challenging to get the hang of going from this to this, but if you want to have a high level backhand in the long run, I really recommend trying to minimize the use of elbow, and that's how you get the most consistency. The next mistake, guys, is that you have the wrong grip on your backhand. This is an insanely common thing, and it looks like this. So if I have the wrong grip on my backhand, you might have seen people doing this. It kind of makes you have to elbow the ball like we just talked about. But if I have the wrong grip on my backhand, it's pretty much impossible to ever have a good backhand. Unless you're some sort of magician, I don't know how you could get a good backhand hitting it like that. What you want to have is what we call the continental or the high continental grip. I talked about this on a video I made a few weeks ago if you're really interested in checking it out. Just know your backhand grip should look like this. You should feel like you're hitting it with the back side of your hand. If you're hitting it with the front side of your hand, you have something very wrong with your grip, and you should probably try to change it if you want to get the most out of your backhand in the long run. The next mistake that's also very common is using too much wrist on your soft game. So the soft game is pretty much any time we're hitting the ball into the kitchen. So a very common example of this is the dink. I see so many players that are cupping their dinks like that. See how I'm flexing my wrist forward as I'm hitting the ball? When you're hitting the ball into the kitchen, you don't want to be using much wrist at all. And for some reason, a lot of players tend to do this. So it seems like a natural thing that players do in the beginning. But as you can see, as I'm dinking, all the power, just like on the backhand, should be coming from my shoulder. So it's a common theme across the court. Even when I'm back a little bit farther, let's say I'm doing resets from back here, I don't want to be using much wrist at all because the wrist makes me lose control. And these are all control-based shots. I don't need much power. So when you're using your soft game, whether you're dinking, hitting resets, or drops, try to minimize the amount of wrist that you're using. And an important thing to note, when you're staying steady with your wrist, that doesn't mean you should have a tight grip on the paddle. You need to practice staying steady but loose, because when you're too tight, you lose your feel. So while I'm hitting my dink here, I'm steady, but I'm only gripping my paddle at around a 2 or 3 out of 10 in terms of tension. If this feels unnatural to you, you can practice it on a wall at home or on the Dink Master, but what's important to note, do not be squeezing the paddle tight on your soft game, or it's gonna be very hard to control your power. The next mistake is taking too big of a backswing at the wrong time. So a backswing is where when I'm preparing to hit my shot, I'm taking my paddle back. So if I'm hitting a drive, it doesn't hurt me that much to take a big backswing. But there's a lot of times where it hurts. So if my opponent hits it at me really hard and I'm trying to hit a drop, the last thing I want to do is take a giant backswing because it's going to mess up my timing. Once my paddle leaves my field of vision, I'm not really as controlled with where it is. If my opponent's hitting the ball hard at me, oh, the ball's right below my feet. If my opponent's hitting the ball hard at me, I need a short backswing so that I can keep my control, okay? So really, even on your drives, you don't need that big of a backswing. If I'm hitting a drive, I can sort of keep everything on the same side of my body that I'm hitting the ball on. If the second I leave and go behind me, your control is gone. So I see a lot of people doing this, but you really need to think about doing this when you're hitting harder shots. So if the ball's coming at you fast, do not take big backswings. It's a recipe for disaster. Use a short, compact backswing. In most cases, that's gonna give you way more control. The next mistake is what I call not pointing your elbow back on a smash. So watch these two smashes. First one, elbow pointing forward. I see a lot of players doing this at the courts. One more. Pointing my elbow forward. That was a really bad shot, but you can see my elbow's pointing forward and I'm using my tricep to extend to get this power. What do pros look like when they hit a smash? They look like this. So as you can see there, I'm pointing my elbow back and I'm using my rotation like I'm throwing a ball to get power. And the difference in power that you can get when you do this is like double. So as you can see, when I'm hitting my overhead like this, I can really crack it. If I get an overhead up here and a point, the point's probably over. If you feel like you can't get anything on the ball, you're probably making this mistake. And all you need to do is practice pointing your elbow back on your overhead. You can really do this with any grip. You should have a continental, but you can do this with an Eastern grip too. If you can get the flow of pointing your elbow back and rotating into the ball, you're gonna get way more power on your smashes and it's gonna be easier to finish off points. The next mistake, guys, is not covering your body at the net with your backhand. So as you can see here, if I try to cover my body with my forehand, I have to get very creative with it. It's not the right way to do it with your technique. There, I'm covering it with my backhand, and it's a lot more natural if I have the continental grip on my volleys to do this. So I can even go a little bit to the side of my body. You should always be favoring your backhand when you're at the kitchen line and people are hitting the ball at you hard, because you need to have an automatic response for when people hit it right at you. You don't want to be all panicky and deciding as the ball is flying at your face what you should be doing. You definitely don't want to be doing forehands too often. You can use them sometimes, but generally when the ball is coming at your body, you should be hitting a backhand. And guys, if you want to see me cover any specific topics in my next few videos, make sure to comment below and I'll try to make them. And also if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try to get back to everybody. And guys, last week we made a video about how to hit your serve harder using the right technique. So if you want to be able to hit your serve harder, head over and watch.